Mark Smelly Bell here, telling you to pick your restriction. I'm on my 10-minute walk. I got my sand bell, got it on my head, working my neck, working my traps, working my mid and upper back. That seems to be where it gets when I got this on here. I have been walking with some weights for a while now, either weighted vests or weight in my hands, and this sand bell is something I can just put on my head, put on my shoulder, do all kinds of stuff with it. But I want to talk to you today about restriction, if you'll hear me out and listen to me while I got this thing on my head that looks ridiculous. 30-pound sand bell. It's got sand in it, so good for the grip and so forth. Anyway, the matter at hand here is we're talking about being lean. We're talking about being in good shape. We're talking about being ripped. We're talking about being jacked and tan. And whenever we talk about being jacked and tan, we got to talk about restriction. There's always some type of restriction. There's carbohydrate restriction, or there's fat restriction. Sometimes people do both for a short period of time, and they bring up their protein. When you fat restrict, you typically are bringing up your carbohydrate intake and your protein intake, okay? When you are restricting your carbohydrates, you bring up your fat and your protein. And then sometimes people will do something called a protein modified sparing fast. They'll utilize that technique, aka like bodybuilding prep. There's only 2-3 weeks left, and I'm just nibbling on veggies and very lean sources of meat, and there's not even a lot of carbohydrate in the mix. That would be where you're you're restricting 2 macronutrients. You're restricting the macronutrient of fat, which is a major energy source for the body, along with another major energy source for the body, carbohydrate. And you're getting rid of mostly both of them. And you might have a bowl of oatmeal in the morning. You might have half a cup of rice with 2 meals later on in the day. You may have an intra-workout carbohydrate or something like that, a la Chris Bumstead's 1,600 calorie a day diet. Look it up. I'll do a review of that diet one day because I thought that was great that he filmed that. 1,600 calories a day for, 4 to 6 weeks, however long he had to do it for, along with cardio, along with lifting. But maybe him and his coach aren't such a big fan of cardio, and maybe that's why they sank those. Some people will choose cardio over the caloric restriction, and others will choose the caloric restriction, and some will choose both. And maybe that's what Bumstead did. I'm not sure. But anyway, restricting 2 macronutrients is really interesting. And that's what happened with the sugar diet, where you're primarily just consuming carbohydrate and you got rid of fat and protein. We really haven't talked about protein restriction because we thought protein restriction would be completely useless. And now, for some people in certain circumstances, we might see a case usage for that as well. Potentially the healing of the metabolism, and also potentially for somebody in my predicament where I'm at a certain body weight and I'm trying to, I still have the goal to get down to 200 pounds, but I'm pushing it back. I'll make the announcement right here. I'm pushing it back a little bit later, maybe towards the end of the year. I'm going to eat a little bit more for now and focus in on holding muscle. And I feel great right now. I feel like I look awesome right now. I'm very happy with the build, the physique, and my strength is going up. I'm getting some PRs on some of the strongman stuff I'm doing. So I've been 215 to 218 in the morning, and I think last night it was like 224, 225 before I went to bed, and I was like, this is kind of awesome, And I'm not going to get way back up in weight. I was 209 as of like 2.5 or maybe 2 weeks ago. So a lot of this is not real weight. It's just me eating more and having more food in my system, a la just having more weight, holding more water, and so on. But anyway, I will get back to that. But the objective here, and what I'm sharing with you guys, is still to be jacked AF. You know, it's still to be jacked and tan. It's just I'm going a slightly different route for the moment because it was just getting to be so difficult for me to really lose that last little bit amount of weight. And remember what I've been saying is I don't want to just dip down to that weight and then not ever be that weight again. I want to stay there. So it's not like I want to necessarily stay at 200, but I would like to stay at 205 to 210. Anyway, to bracket myself down there, I don't want to like work on consuming way less food and tracking calories and all that other BS. I don't like that way of doing things. I've never done things that way. It's not that I don't think it works. I do think it could be effective, but I'd rather eat when I'm hungry and eat till I'm full. And this is a hobby for me, you know, and it's a lot of fun doing it the way I do it. If I have to do it too much of the way that somebody else does it, or if I have to do it too calculated, the hell with it, just gets to be too annoying. So I don't like it to be annoying. The ways that I do it now feel manageable. Let's get back to the idea of restriction, sacrifice, restriction. You know, you're sacrificing and restricting, you know, potentially a macronutrient or time. You could be restricting your time, and then you have time restricted feeding where you're like, I'm just going to eat in this 4-hour window. And because I'm eating this 4-hour window, I can, you know, almost eat what I want and can only do so much damage, right? Probably not a great way to look at it for somebody who's had issues with their food in the past, because, you know, you could wolf down a bunch of pizza and be up over 3,000 calories very quickly, or get fast food. And remember, a message from me is that most people don't really need a diet. They need to figure out a plan that doesn't lead them to binging. And they need to find out and figure out a plan that doesn't lead them to driving through and getting fast food. And that's really the truth. You know, that's what most Americans probably need. Most Americans could probably use their oven a little bit more. Or just use their oven, period. Use their oven once a week, you know. Use the Pyrex. Break that bitch out. Throw in a bunch of chicken thigh and chicken breast. Season that thing. Throw that in there. Throw some potatoes in there. And have that over the next couple days. You know, Italian seasoning, or, you know, season it to your liking. And that would be your meals for the, you know, part of your meals for the week, without even counting macros and without even really sacrificing much of anything. Except for you'd be sacrificing, and you would be, I guess you would be like fasting away from fast food and fried food, which would be a brilliant practice. Fast food and fried food, just stay the F away from them. Can you do it? Can you do that for a week? Fast food, fried food, pizza. Can you do that for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month? Imagine making a pact right now with your significant other. Say, hey, babe, Smelly is talking about this diet instead. He's not even talking about any sort of real plan, except for maybe I would advise you to try to hit your protein markers so that you're not hungry. Because if you hit your protein, that should drive down hunger. So if you do 1 gram per pound of body weight in terms of protein, or get close to that, anywhere between 75% of that to 100% of that, you should be good. Even 125% of that if you're hungry. But smash your protein and stay away from fast food, pizza, and fried food. That would be a really good start for a lot of people. A really good start for a lot of people would also be, you know, to not use DoorDash. A really good start would be to have some fresh fruit in the house. Eat some fresh fruit once or twice a day. You could really just do a lot of this by adding rather than subtracting. You know, rather than by subtraction, say, hey, have 4 servings of fruit every day. Imagine saying, like, having, you know, 2 oranges and 2 bananas every day with a few handfuls of blueberries. Like, that's kind of a lot of food to get through. On top of You know, eating some peppers, eating some onions, eating some garlic, eating a potato. Now you got a potato, a couple oranges, a banana. I mean, shit. We didn't even get to any meat just yet. Throw in some lean steak, some lean. I mean, and then when you do stuff like that, you don't even have to go as lean as I'm always preaching. You could have a little bit of extra. You could have more fat in there. Your fat grams could creep into the 40s, 50s, maybe the 60s. I'll look the other way. Don't worry about it. You probably have a very successful diet that way. Anyway, back to the restriction. You're either like calorie restricting, you're time restricting, there's some sort of restriction going on. And what I like to share with you guys is like, you go ahead and pick the restriction. I'll just tell you what I've done and what I've been successful with. The restriction I've been most successful with in terms of weight loss has been carbohydrate restriction. Going on a low carb diet, being on the war on carbs. And that diet was at its best for me when I didn't completely restrict the carbohydrates. So we could talk zero carb, It wasn't the zero carb that did it for me. For me personally, it was having some influence of carbohydrates was the most effective. Remember I told you guys in previous video, dark chocolate and perfect food bars. Not every night, not all the time, but on a lot of nights, that's what I ate as my last thing in the evening with like a protein shake. And I loved that. And man, the macros on that are screwed. Like there's a lot of fat, a lot of stuff going on there. Would still recommend keep your fats, maybe under 80 or something in that case, okay? Especially if you're a bigger person. But that was super effective for me. That was the most effective. Second most effective diet I've ever done, ever tried. And probably the most effective for performance and muscle growth is restricting fat. Now the fat doesn't have to be restricted down to nothing. I hear some of you complain about it. Some of the guys like, oh, well, he injects his hormones so he doesn't have to worry about it. Fucking assholes. Seriously. Yeah, I use performance-enhancing drugs. But the fat on your body and you consuming 40, 50 grams of fat every day should be plenty of fat for almost all of you. There's some of you that might be big old monsters and you might need a little bit more. But there's no reason for your fat to tank, especially when you're having good fats, quote unquote good fats, when you're eating fats from what I think is good fats is not typical, I guess, but macadamia nut, cashew, coconut, MCT, stearic acid from grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef, and also, butter, cacao, those kinds of things. Those are really awesome sources of fat. The medium to long chain fats are pretty nice. And then, you got some stuff, olives and so forth. Those can be pretty good. Avocado can be pretty good too. So you can go with some of those. But anyway, in my opinion, the lower you keep the fats, the easier it's going to be to get lean. And you just get leaner and leaner and leaner. Now, you might get tired because then your calories might start to be too low. So it's, you don't want de novo lipogenesis happening. I don't think that you want to bring in more carbohydrates and have them just turn into fatty acids. I don't think that's the goal. So, but we're not looking for a calorie restriction. And that's always important to mention. That's what I'm preaching. And that's what I've been preaching from day one, whether it be the war on carbs or that's why I'm so passionate about this stuff, whether it's the war on carbs or me sharing this new message of the sugar diet or this new message of this high carb, high protein, bodybuilding, low fat diet. This message is the same. We're not really trying to restrict calories. I want you to restrict the macro but I don't want you to restrict calories. Do you understand? Like, okay, yes, you might still be restricting calories a little bit, and that might be the reason why you have some weight loss, because that's the very definition of it, but it's not an intentional. And this is I talked with Michael Hearn about this a bunch recently, and I was saying there's a big difference between an intentional dive to like really get gritty and really get nasty with your body composition. That's an intentional thing, but you can only hang in there for just a few weeks on that. You know, maybe 2 months, or, you know, okay, maybe. Seasoned guy like Michael Hearn, sure, okay. He can do 8 or 12 weeks hanging out there because he's Michael Hearn. But I don't want any part of that, and I don't want to do that. And that's what Mike and I talked about a lot. Now, Mike's physique is off the charts, right? I'm not in his league in terms of physique. I'm not, you know, he looks awesome, right? He looks amazing. And so his thoughts on some of these things, I think, should carry a little bit more weight than maybe my thoughts, since he's done it, right? And then if I get real granular, talking real specific about things for powerlifting, well, then maybe my voice should ring a little louder, in my opinion, because Mike took powerlifting really far and did amazing with it, but he didn't take it quite to the lengths that I did. Anyway, it's always going to be about restriction. You got to make a sacrifice somewhere. You got to like man up. You got to make a decision on what it is you're going to give up. It could just be calories. It could just be 250 calories. You could just like write that out and like try that. But I think that blows. I don't like that method. I don't recommend it. I'd rather see you just like lower the amount of carbs and bring your fats up, or lower your amount of, either lower your fats or lower your carbs, right? That's the restriction. And on top of that, if you do lower your carbohydrate intake, there's no reason to exponentially have your fats be so high. I think that's also important. That's something I did do with the war on carbs over the last couple of years as a refinement. Was I used to have like 250 grams of fat for no reason. And then I was like, I don't need that much. I only actually really need like 100 or 120 is plenty with the amount of protein that I'm getting in. There's no reason for me to eat this way. And I just got leaner and got in better shape. Went from 270 to 260 to 250 to 240. Had great progress by doing that. So the truth might be, you might have to look at restricting 2 macronutrients. That's the dirty truth and the dirty secret that people aren't probably sharing with you, is that you might have to limit 2 macronutrients. So even on this high carb, high protein diet, it might have to come to a point when you're making a decision on if you want to get leaner, that you might have to drop the carbs down a little bit. So let's say you're having 600 to 700 grams of carbohydrates a day, and you're having 220 grams of protein every day. Keep the protein probably where it's at, and just, you know, chop those carbohydrates down by 150 and kind of see where that gets you. And if the fat grams are still in there, you would want to bring those down a little bit too. But if you're already at 30 grams of fat and you're not getting any leaner, right, you start to run out of room. That's where you might want to embark on doing some of the stuff the bodybuilders do. That's where you might want to say, okay, well, I got to walk a little bit more. I got to do a little bit more cardio. And you got to do consistent cardio. 30 minutes, 4 times a week would probably be the low end of what you might need to really see yourself tightening up and getting as shredded as you're looking to do. So no matter how you slice it, there's always going to be restriction in there. I apologize. There's nothing I can do about that. But in my opinion, one of the best routes to go is to cut the fat way down. I found this to not really be as much of an inconvenience as you may think. Now, it does make it much harder to eat out. So if you're someone that door dashes all the time, you might have to be more of a low carb person, because the way that food's going to be prepared, it's going to be like cooked in fat and oils and shit like that. And so you don't have much control over that. And so therefore, you might have to do more of a low carb diet. But if you cook for yourself and you shop for yourself and you're doing some of these other things, and also something to keep in mind, the leanest people in the world eat low fat. The leanest people in the world eat low fat. And when someone's ass is on the line, they eat low fat. There's not a lot of people stepping on a stage for a bodybuilding show or a fitness show eating high amounts of fat. It's rare. Also, professional sports. Professional sports, I don't want to say that there's nobody, but there's next to nobody. There's next to nobody. It's all underperformers that are eating the higher fat, and it's cool. It's cool that once in a while there's somebody that squirms out and there's somebody that eats this other way. It's not to say that eating those other ways is ineffective. It's just the truth. Now, there might be a couple people that don't eat really high carb that are high level performers. But for the most part, the people that are trying to keep their body a certain aesthetics, especially, they're not eating shit for fat. They're under 50. They're all under 50 grams. They're all under 50 grams, minus maybe a couple guys that are on some shit. Stan Efforting shared with me 70 grams of fat, 500 to 600 grams of carbs, 250 to 300 grams of protein every day. But, Stan trained twice a day. Could he have simply just lowered the fat and not had to train as much? We don't know. Stan looked awesome. He was, next to flawless, I would say. I don't think there could have been, everyone always knocks on the legs or whatever, but I think he did the best he could with the legs. And it wasn't because of lack of strength. He squatted 900 pounds. He's a beast. Anyway, guys, keep tuned in here. Thank you so much for all the support. Thank you guys for the comments and the questions. Keep the comments, the questions, keep them coming. Let me know more topics you guys want me to share. You guys want me to share more stuff with my workouts? I've been working out like a maniac. This thing right here is serious. Like, I know it looks ridiculous, but this is seriously part of some of my regimen, part of my routine. I don't always walk with it on my head for this long, but this was a good go of it. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Go and get yourself shredded. I'm at 500 grams of carbohydrates, maybe 600 a day. Grams of fat, 30-ish, 30, 40. Protein, trying to get that protein to be up over 250 every single day. Catch you guys later. If you follow along and do the same macros, if you keep your macros at around 30 grams of fat a day, and you have your carbohydrates somewhere between 400 and 600, and you get your protein around 200, you'll be ripped. I mean, you can adjust those things, accordingly to your size, to your own size and shape, but that'll work. At first, it might feel like overeating. At first, you might gain a little bit of weight, but you're going to gain some weight, gain some strength, gain some muscle, and then the fat's going to start to come off. Catch you guys later. Bye.